Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there, Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to another edition of Warhammer Wednesdays. This is where we showcase Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports every single Wednesday with our series, The Golden Age. And this is Battle Report number 115. It is a 3,000 point army that has fought between Stormcast Eternals as well as Tzeentch Legion of Chaos. My buddy O'Death is bringing the Esoteric Order of the Thousand Suns, and I'm bringing the Lords of Azure Skies. So, if you've been watching a couple of videos on our channel by this point, you would have seen that we are actually planning on using our studio's Stormcast Eternals army and plan on using it for Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And the reason why this was the case is because for the longest time, my Stormcast Eternals army was pretty much just collecting dust on the shelves of our office. I wasn't really using it for much of anything. I don't play Warhammer Age of Sigmar anymore, so for the longest time they're just kind of sitting around not doing very much. And it kind of bothered me a little bit just because I don't like having things in my studio that we can't really use for our battle reports. So I started doing some research and I found a PDF document on the Bells of Lost Souls website. And basically it was a way for you to play Stormcast Eternals in your games of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And so I got really super excited about it because around the time that that document was written, it was around the time where the second edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar was coming out. And by that point, the Stormcast Eternals had only two major chambers unlocked for their army. You had the Warrior Chamber, which was the initial run of miniatures that came out with the first edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. And then you had the Vanguard Hunter chambers that came out next. And so the rules pack that was written, that was on the Bells of Lost Souls website, contained the rules for that second edition of Stormcast Eternals. So I decided to go and use those rules to make a 3,000 point Stormcast Eternals army. Now, the rules itself are in no way official rules that have been released by Games Workshop. I mean, there's really nothing official about it, but that's perfectly fine though, because I am a hobby wargamer. I really don't play in tournaments, and I just mainly wargame with my friends, so not such a big deal for us to use these homemade rules on that part. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we will show you guys photos of both armies as well as our army lists. So if you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this battle report, you can pause and take a look at your own leisure, or you can look down in the description box below for our detailed army lists as well. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought, or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the scenarios that we will be playing for this one. The scenario is Battleline. It is the most typical scenario that we play on this channel, with standard deployment as well as standard victory conditions. As for standard victory conditions, in case you're unaware, what ends up happening is that for every unit that you destroy, as well as character that you destroy, you earn that many points in victory points to be totaled at the end of the battle report. Now, in the case of some individual factors, for example, if a unit that you destroyed has a standard bearer, you earn an additional 100 points for that. You also earn an additional 100 points for the battle standard bearer that you managed to kill, as well as for enemy generals. So that's pretty much how you total up your victory conditions for Battleline, in case you didn't know that part already. So with the scenarios over, let's go on and talk about the battle plan as well as deployment real quick. So up next we'll be talking about battle plans as well as deployments for this battle. As you can see, we are playing on a 4x6 table. My friend O'Death is deployed on the far side of the table, while I'm deployed on the near side of the table. And pretty much I plan on defending my center of my army for the most part. I'm planning on keeping my shooting elements in the center of my deployment area, as well as the shooting elements on my right hand side of my army, and just keeping them as kind of an anchor for the most part, so that way I can draw the Chaos Legion closer to my main battle lines. Now, while that's occurring, my next objective is to pretty much concentrate most of my fighting on the left-hand flank. I plan on sending my prosecutors and using their flying ability to quickly flank my opponent on the left-hand side. And at the same time, I also plan on using a magical spell for my bounce spell that's used for my liberators. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that way they can also teleport across the battlefield and catch my opponent's Stormlords, which is his huge unit of Chaos Warriors, in a pincer attack. Pretty much I'm flanking him on the left-hand side with both my liberators as well as my prosecutors. And if you look here in the center and the bottom, I got my 5 Paladin Retributors located there. And that's because they're going to be using the Ride the Lightning ability for them to teleport down onto the battlefield. And I kind of use them as a stopgap measure to stop whatever wild cards that my opponent might throw for me. And that's pretty much what my battle plan for this one is. Now, unfortunately, I did forget to take a photo of the individual close-ups for our deployment area. So the next slide is actually going to be the overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield, and I have to do the deployment for that way. And the reason why is because I got so excited to play out my Stormcast Eternals, I forgot to take deployment pictures. It's just that simple. So with the battle plan out of the way, let's go and talk about deployment real fast. So let's go ahead and talk about deployment real quick. On the left-hand flank, for my opponent anyways, we have 2 units. Those are 2 units of 3 Screamers of Tzeentch. We have the Colors Out of Space as well as the Hunters of the Dark. Right next to him on the right-hand side, that big orange squid-looking miniature, that's actually the Shadow of Innistrad. It is O'Death's Mutalith Vortex Beast. And in the center of the army is where most of his core choices are located at. In the direct center, that unit is called the Stormlords. It is a unit of 29 Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch with Musician, Standard Bearer. They all have Chaos Armors and Halberds, and they also got the Mark of Tzeentch as well, giving them the ability to have a 6 of Ward Save. Now, right in front of them, we have 2 Exalted Flamers. The pink one on the left-hand side is called the Ruin of Zarnath, while the one on the right-hand side, the blue one, is called the Quest of Aranon. So they're both Exalted Flamers. And then right next to him on the right-hand side, that very large monster miniature, that is Lord Tremendous. He is a Demon Prince of Tzeentch. He's also the general of this army as well. He's a level 4 wizard with the lore of metal. He has demonic flight as well as chaos armor. He's also a demon as Tzeentch as well. He's also packing the charm shield, the dragon bane gem, the other trickster shard. He also has the mutation scaled skin, flaming breath, soul feeder, as well as chaos familiar. Right next to him on the right hand side, that unit is called the Dunwich Horrors. It is a unit of 20 pink horrors of Tzeentch with musician as well as standard bearer. Oh, I'm sorry, they also have an iridescent horror leading that unit as well. They also have a champion. Now, you can't really see him because unfortunately I didn't zoom in on this one, but right behind that unit of pink horrors, that's Skeksis of Dark Crystals. He is a Chaos Sorcerer of Tzeentch, level 2. He's got a hand weapon, Chaos Armor. He's also riding a Discus Tzeentch. He has a Enchanted Shield for 1-up armor save, the Talisman of Preservation for a 3-up ward save, and the Third Eye is Tzeentch for a rerollable save of 1. So that way he can reroll any 1s for his ward saves as well. It's a very dangerous kit out. And then finally, on the far right hand side, that unit is called the Second Sons. It is a unit of 10 Chaos Knights as Tzeentch with Musician as well as Standard Bearer. They have ensorcelled weapons, Chaos Armor, as well as Barded Chaos Steeds as well. So now that we have the deployment over with for the Chaos Legion Tzeentch, let's go ahead and move on to the Stormcast Eternals, which are located on the bottom of the screen. That is my army, the Lords of Azure Skies. So starting on the left-hand side, I have a unit called the Seraphs of Aether. It is a unit of 5 Prosecutors. They have Sigmund armor as well as paired Celestial Hammers. No upgrades because unfortunately my army can't take Standard Bearers or Musicians. However, I do have a character in that unit as well. I have Icarus the Lamplighter. He is a Knight Azeros. He's also got the Shriving Light, which means that all enemy units within 6 inches add +1 to their leadership scores for not leadership scores, but for their leadership tests. And for units of either Beastmen, Skaven, Demons, or Warriors of Chaos, they add D3 to their leadership results as well. Right next to him in the relative center on the left-hand side of that hut in my center line, that unit is called the Solemn Martyrs. It is a unit of 10 Liberators. They have Sigmund armor, great weapons, as well as shields, and they have a couple of characters in that unit as well. We have Jathun, the Sullen, who's my Lord Relictor. He's also packing a Relic Hammer. He also has a Priest of Sigmar ability, so he's a level 1 wizard for all intents and purposes. He has a Dispel Scroll. He's got Lightning Storms, Healing Storms, as well as Lightning Chariot for his spells. And he's also my army's Battle Standard Bearer as well. And then right next to him is Horus the Stormbringer. He is my Knight Vexilor. I apologize, he's my Battle Standard Bearer. I do apologize for that one. He's got Sigmarin armor as well as a great weapon. He's also got the Meteoric Standard, which means that once per battle, I can call down a meteor strike onto the battlefield, and everything within d6 inches of that point suffers 2d6 strength 5 hits, so that thing is brutal. And also in that unit as well is Jericho the Doomcaller. He is my Knight Heralder. He's got his Sigmarond armor as well as a Sigmarite broadsword. He's also got the Thunder Blast ability, which means in the shooting phase he can pick a terrain feature within 15 inches and roll a d6, and for each non-skirmishing units within that terrain piece, with that many inches of the terrain piece, they suffer d6 strength 5 wounds as well, so that part is pretty awesome. And he also counts as a musician for my army as well. Now, over on the right-hand side, that is a unit of 10 Judicators called the Scions of Mercy. They're armed with Sigmarand armor as well as Skybolt Bowls and as well as hand weapons, and they have 2 Shockbolt Bows in that army as well. When that happens is that the Shockbolt Bow has a range of 24 inches, is strength 5, and it does d6 wounds, wound rolls to the enemy. It also has a sniper special roll as well. Now, in the back there, of course, I got my 5 Paladin Retributors, the Zenithal Titans. They have reinforced Sigmarond armor as well as lightning hammers, and those guys are off to the side because I plan on using the teleportation ability with Ride the Lightning. And on the far right behind them, of course, is the General of my army. He is a Lord Celicit on Dracoth. His name is Lord Ios of Azure Earth. He's the General of my army as well. And over on the right-hand side, I have a couple more units. First of all, on the right-hand side, I have the Skyforge Snipers. It is a unit of 3 Vanguard Raptors. They got long strike crossbows as well. Behind them are the Venerable Falcons, which are 3 Aether Wings. And on the far right-hand side are the Heralds of the Dawn, which are 3 Vanguard Paladors armed with Star Strike Javelins. So with deployment over with, let you go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Odeth and I roll off for priority to see which of us will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1, and my friend Odeth managed to get the initiative on this one. So the Chaos Legion as Tzeentch will be going first, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. And as you can see, for the most part, my opponent just comes up quite quickly. The reason why is because he's a Warrior Chaos army. His whole strategy revolves around being stuck in close combat, so he's going to try to move across the battlefield as quickly as he can. Now, it should be noticed that his units in the center of his army, those guys, those infantry forces, they primarily march forward. They're maximum moon allowance, so that way they can get within range to do some charges. However, on his flanks, such as his Screamers of Tzeentch on the left-hand side, as well as his Second Sons and his General on the right-hand side, they just move up their normal moon allowance. They don't really march forward. And the reason why is because he doesn't want to get countercharged in the flanks. He relatively wants to keep his army in a kind of a centered line type of formation, close enough so that way he can declare charges and hopefully make them, but at the same time far away enough to where the point where he can't be countercharged. So I have my work planned out for me. For the most part, this plan is relatively okay with me, and the reason why is because the only forces I plan on setting up moving forward are my my prosecutors on my left-hand flank, as well as my Palador Hunters on the right-hand side. Those are the only units I plan on setting up for the most part. I'm going to try to wait till my opponent gets a little bit closer before I engage him, and hopefully destroy him that way by getting him in a full envelopment. So here is a close-up of the left-hand side of Odeth's left-hand flank. You can see the colors out of space as well as the Hunters of the Dark moving up as quickly as they can, or to outflank me on the left-hand side. Here's a close-up of his center forces with the Shadow of Innistrad on the left-hand flank, which is his Mutolith Vortex Beast, as well as the Quest of Iranon and the Rune of Sarnath, his 2 Exalted Flamers. They marched up forward, so they will not be able to shoot this round, and then right behind them, that is the Stormlords, with their Battle Standard Bearer, Ackled Hellbrass, is located in the back of there as well. And here's a close-up of the right-hand flank for my friend Odeth. Up in the front, we have the Dunwich Horrors. Those guys marched up forward as quick as they can in order to outflank me on the right-hand side. And you can also see Skeksis of Dark Crystal, who also flew forward and taking cover behind that stone bridge. That way he doesn't get shot at. And finally, here's a close-up of the far right-hand flank of the battlefield. On the left-hand side, you can see that Lord Tremendous is also flew forward as well, trying to add some support to the right-hand flank. He is taking some cover behind that giant boulder there, so that way he doesn't get sniped at by my shooting elements. And then finally on the far right hand side you can see the Second Sons, which is that huge unit of 10 Chaos Knights. Those guys just moved up for their normal moon allowance, so that way they don't have to worry about getting countercharged for the most part. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. For the most part, my opponent's magic phase was pretty lackluster. He did try to cast off the boosted version of Final Transmutation. He wanted to cast that directly onto my unit of Adjudicators. Luckily for me, though, I decided to burn my Dispel Scroll from my character, from my Relic Lord, who was carrying a Dispel Scroll. So because of that, spell kind of went away. However, my opponent was able to get off a boosted version of Searing Doom. I got really lucky on that one because the number of hits he rolled was actually Snake Eyes. So he does cause 2 hits for me, but because my knight Venator, he basically has such a high armor save, basically he's rolling a 3-up in order to wound him. Luckily for me though, I do have 3 wounds left on my knight Azeros, my knight Venator, so he still has 1 wound left, which means he can do some shooting hopefully before he dies. So with the magic phase over with, we skip shooting phase because my opponent's shooting elements can't shoot this turn. We skip close combat phase and we go to the bottom of turn number 1. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield at the end of turn number 1. This photo is taken after the movement phase, and at this point I decide to act on my plan for the most part. Like I said before, I plan on fighting defensively from most of my infantry forces. So as you can see here, my martyrs, those guys, the Solemn Martyrs, they kind of stand their ground because I'm not going to send those Liberators going in anywhere. At the same time, I also do exactly the same thing with the Scions of Mercy. My General Lord Ios of Azure Earth, he stays behind with the the Thundercaller as well because there is no real need for him to move as well. I do exactly the same thing with the Skyforged Snipers, as well as my Knight Venator as well, Orion the Sky Hunter. I keep him behind as well. Now, what I do, however, is declare a charge forward. I declare a charge forward real quick with my the Seraphs of the Aether, which is my unit of prosecutors. Located in that unit as well is Icarus the Lamplighter, who's my knight Azeros, and those characters go flying across the battlefield as quick as they can, engaging the colors out of space. So because of that, my prosecutors will be fighting against the Screamers of Tzeentch, which is a really good test of their abilities because I'm not really sure how these Stormcast Eternal guys really operate. This is the very first time I'm using them from Warhammer Fantasy Battle, so I'm pretty anxious to see exactly what they could do. So because of that, they go charging forward directly into the Screamers. Now, at the same time that was occurring, I also decided to move up my Knights Paladins, my Heralds of the Dawn. I decided to use their Ride the Wind Etheric ability, which means that in the movement phase, I roll 6d6, and those guys basically move that far as if they could fly as well. However, they really can't land within 3 inches of enemy unit, though, so because of that, I decided to use that one. As you can see, they go rocketing right up the right-hand flank and end up 3 inches behind the Second Sons, which I'm really looking forward to using because I plan on throwing their Star Strike Javelins directly into the Second Sons if I can. And that pretty much makes my move phase for this one. So here's a close-up of the Seraphs of the Aether as well as Icarus the Lamplighter getting ready to bring the pain on these Screamers from the colors out of space. Meanwhile, here's a close-up of my Solemn Martyrs as well as the Scions of Mercy and my General Lord Ios of Azure Earth. All 3 of those, as well as all my characters and my Solemn Martyrs, they're just kind of standing their ground because there's no point for them moving forward at this point. You can also see that my Zenithal Titans, my unit of 5 Retributors, they're still off on the side of the table, and the reason why is because they can't use their teleportation ability until the top of turn number 2. And here's a close-up of my Skyforged Snipers as well as the Venerable Falcons. They're just kind of standing their ground for the most part. And at the same time, you can see exactly the same thing with Orion the Sky Hunter, who is my Knight Venator. And I plan on using his shooting ability during the shooting phase, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. And that takes us directly to the close-up here of my Heralds of the Dawn. Those guys are riding the Wind's Etheric ability to land 3 inches right behind the Second Sons. And I'm really looking forward to see exactly what their Star Strike Javelins can do by throwing them into the back of some Chaos Knights. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, I decide to take my plan and to throw it to the wind. And the reason why is because I'm getting over anxious. It's just as simple as that. I've never played Stormcast Eternals before in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and I was really excited to see exactly what these guys can do. And so instead of doing the smart thing by holding back my forces, make my opponent come to me, I decided to do something crazy I usually don't do. I decided to take the offense early is what I decided to do. So what I ended up doing during the magic phase, I use Jathun the Sullen, who's my Lord Relictor. He has a spell called Lightning Chariot. It's a bound spell that's level 9, and it's an Augment spell, right? And what it does has a 3-inch movement. And what happened is that I choose a chosen unit, and I can sit it anywhere 24 inches, up to 24 inches from the original location, but I have to be at least 12 inches away from enemy units as well. So as you can see in this photo here, basically I just kind of teleport my unit of Solemn Martyrs all the way across the battlefield to the left-hand flank there of the Storm Lords as well. So as you can see there, I have my Knight Vexilor, my Knight Heraldor, as well as my Lord Relictor, as well as that huge unit of 10 Liberators, just kind of parking right there on the left-hand flank. I decided that the plan was that hopefully by turn number 2, I can then deep strike my Zenithal Titans in order to attack the back of the Stormlords. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for at this point, and that's the reason why I kind of did it. Needless to say, I used most of my power dice in order to make that spell go off, so that's pretty much what ended up happening for the magic phase. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And the shooting phase, the glorious shooting phase. It was absolutely fantastic. The first thing I decided to do, however, first of all, was decide to activate Jericho the Doomcaller. That's my Knight Heraldor, and he uses Thunder Blast ability, which means that I decided to target that forest right there in the middle of the photo, and it managed to target every unit within 3 inches of that forest, and all those units suffer D6 strength 5 hits, which is all kinds of awesome. I also decided to activate Horus the Stormbringer's Meteoric Standard as well, put it directly on that same spot. Also managed to kill a couple of characters as well. And then after that, I decided to open fire real quick with my Adjudicators. So because of that, the Scions of Mercy concentrated fire directly onto the pink horrors and managed to kill 4 of those guys, which was all really awesome. The Thunder Blast from the Trumpet as well as from the Meteoric Standard managed to kill 8 Chaos Warriors, which was all kinds of awesome. Now, as for the two Exalted Flamers, those guys were killed by the Sky Bolts, the Sky Shock Bows, which means that I did manage to hit both of them. I did manage to wound both of them as well, and so because I get D6 wound rolls for each of those miniatures, so that part was pretty awesome. Basically, was able to put 2 wounds directly onto the Ruin of Sarnath, as well as I think it was 2 wounds as well for, I think it was what it was for the Quest of Iranon. Now what ends up happening is because since my Adjudicators didn't move at all during the last turn, they actually get to shoot twice is what they've been doing. Now as long as they're targeting the same target. Now as for my regular Adjudicators go up against the pink horrors, they basically didn't cause any damage. Their first volley of fire was actually much better. Either I missed their shots or I failed to win them because of those ward saves. However, the real star of the show though were my 2 Sky Bolt bows. They're able to finish off those 2 Exalted Flamers. So just like that, those guys all collapsed and died. Luckily for my opponent though, he does pass his panic check for his Stormlords, and they stand their ground and they keep on moving forward. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase, and as you can see in this photo, my prosecutors as well as my Knight Azeroth, they had no problem whatsoever just putting the hurting directly onto the colors out of space. Icarus the Lamplighter just by himself was able to kill one of the Screamers outright and managed to put a floating wound on him, and of course the rest of the members of the Seraphs of the Aether, they had no problem whatsoever just killing off the rest of the colors out of space. Now I do suffer a wound in the process of doing so during the combat phase, so because of that, it goes directly onto my Knight Azeroth, Icarus the Lamplighter. He was the one that actually took the wound on that part. But on that though, all things considered, was actually pretty awesome as well. By the time I got done with the difference in combat resolution, I just pretty much atomized the unit for the most part. Which is great because since this unit is a unit of skirmishers, they can, basically charge in any direction. And I plan on taking on that second unit of Screamers from the Hunters in the Dark on the left-hand side. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and we go directly with the Legion of Chaos. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Legion of Chaos, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and my buddy decides to kind of divide up his forces for the most part. The first thing he decides to do, he decides to charge forward with the Hunters of the Dark. They go directly to the left-hand side of my prosecutors. So because of that, my prosecutors as well as my Knight Azeroth will be engaged in close combat with those 3 Screamers. And considering how well they did so well against the colors out of space, I'm not really worried about that too much. He does declare a charge also with his second sons. Unfortunate for him, though, he fails his charge. I think he moves up something like 6 inches, and because he decided to move forward, I decided to stand my ground for my Skyborn snipers, my three Vanguard Raptors. Unfortunately for me, though, I was only able to kill 2 of those guys, but, you know, considering that you're fighting against Chaos Knights, I guess killing 2 of them on the charge really isn't all that bad, all things considered. He also decided to declare a charge as well with his Pink Horse and the Dunwich Horse. Unfortunately, though, he fails his charge roll as well. It's because the Dunwich Horse move up 6 inches. At the same time that's occurring, for the rest of his moves, he decides to reform the Mutalith Vortex Beast. So the Shadow of Innistrad does a 180 to face off against my Scions of my Sullen Martyrs. And he does exactly the same thing with the Stormlords facing the left-hand side to face against my Liberators. And then finally, he does fly up Lord Tremendous as well as Texas Guard Crystals to get in a crossfire for my my Hunter Paladors over in the upper right-hand corner from my Heralds of the Dawn. And that pretty much makes up his move phase for this one. So here's a close-up of the move phase on the left-hand flank. As you can see, the Hunters of the Dark go directly into my Knights of the Aether from my Prosecutors. So I'm really interested exactly to see how all my Seraphs of the Aether hold up against those guys as well. Meanwhile, here's a close-up of the Stormlords squaring off directly against my Sullen Martyrs, and you can kind of see in the bottom there the Mutalith Vortex Beast, the Shadow of Innistrad, has done exactly the same thing. And here's a close-up of the Dunwich Horrors filming their charge forward directly towards my my Adjudicators. And I forgot to mention this earlier, my Adjudicators did stand their ground and open fire, and so because of that, the Scions of Mercy was able to kill one of the Pink Horrors, and so I guess that part's kind of cool. One less dude to worry about, I guess. And here's a close-up of the Second Sons attempting to charge directly into the Skyforge Snipers. I decided to hold my ground and to open fire as a charge reaction. I do manage to kill 2 members of the Chaos Knights, so that part was pretty epic. And finally, here is a close-up of Lord Tremendous, as well as Skeksis of Dark Crystal, getting ready to unload some magical firepower directly onto my Palador Hunters. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. Unfortunately for my friend Odeth, though, his magic phase actually wasn't all that lackluster. In the end, he was able to, I think, be able to cast 2 spells. The first one he was able to cast was the Blue Fire Tzeentch. Skeksis of Dark Crystal actually put 3 wounds directly onto my knights, my Hunter Palador Hunters. And I also passed my toughness checks because I do get the Ward Fire ability. But because these guys already have a ward save, though, you can't stack a ward save and a regen save, so it just pretty much petered out for the most part. However, he was able to put 3 wounds directly onto one of my Palador Hunters, which is really rough. Unfortunately for my opponent, he did try to cast Final Transmutation once again. I was able to dispel that die. However, he was finally able to put Searing Doom directly onto my Heralds of the Dawn, and that part was pretty terrifying, but when he rolled for his number of hits, which is a d6, he rolled a 1, so because they put additional wound on it, so that part's kind of sad. So one of my Palador Hunters now is about halfway dead, which is kind of troublesome, but for the most part, though, really can't complain, all things considered. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And yet again, my Seraphs of the Aether had no problem whatsoever putting the hurt directly onto the Hunters of the Dark. Icarus and Lamplighter, my Knight Azure was able to kill one of them all by himself, and of course the other 2 were actually just killed outright by the rest of my Prosecutors, so that part's pretty epic. My plan now is to actually have him move forward and actually charge directly into the Shadow of Innistrad, so that way he can't attack the flank of my Liberators from the Sullen Martyrs. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2. So that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Stormcast Eternals, and once again this photo is taken after the movement phase. And as you can see in this photo, I decided to take the offense and to charge forward. First of all, I send in my Seraphs of the Aether as well as my Knight Azeroth, Icarus of the Lamplighter. Those 6 guys go crashing directly into the left-hand flank of the Shadow over Innistrad, so stop that Mutalith Vortex Beast from causing you problems. At the same time, I also take my Sullen Martyrs and I have them charge directly into the Stormlords. Like I said, I'm really interested to see exactly what these guys can do. They're Strength 4, Toughness 4, 3-up Armor save, 5-up Ward save. They also have 2 wounds apiece. They also have great weapons for Strength 6 on the attack. So I'm really interested to see exactly how my Liberators stack up against Chaos Warriors. Because, let's face it, if you want to see how good of a close combat and your close combat units are, throw them against a unit of Chaos Chaos Warriors, and you'll find out real quick. At the same time, I'm also curious to see exactly how the Lord Relictor, as well as the Knight Vexilor, and the Knight Heraldor, I want to see exactly how they can do in close combat as well, because their stats look pretty impressive, so that's the reason why I want to see it. So that's what this whole, series of Battle Reports will be about, is testing out the Stormcast Eternals, so I figure why not at this point. While that's occurring, I also decide to charge with my Heralds of the Dawn, so my Hunter Paladors go directly into Skeksis of Dark Crystal and actually engage that guy in combat as well. So really excited to see exactly what those Vanguard Paladors can do in close combat as well. Now for the remaining moves phase, I actually move up Lord Ios of Azure Earth. I have him move up to the right-hand side of the of my Adjudicators, so that way they can kind of protect them from being attacked against. My Scions or Mercy are really good at shooting, but not so much against close combat, so hopefully Lord Ios will be able to balance the scales in case those pink horrors come in. At the same time, I also move up my Venerable Falcons as well. My Aether Wings go directly to the left-hand side of the Skyforge Snipers, that way they can intercept those Chaos Knights if it comes to that as well. Meanwhile, I also decided to use the Ride the Lightning ability for my Zenithal Titans. So because that I use the From the Skies They Came special rule, they teleport directly within 12 inches right behind the Stormlords as well. So that part was kind of nice. Originally they landed kind of close, but unfortunately I had to scatter them a little bit. So because of that, they kind of scooted a little bit to the back near the riverbank. That is kind of rough because these guys only are movement 4, but hopefully I'll be able to charge into the back of the Stormlords and get them stuck in a pincer attack. So here's a close-up of the Seraphs of the Aether as well as Icarus the Lamplighter, getting ready to bring the pain to the Shadow for Innistrad. At the same time, my Solemn Martyrs are going toe-to-toe with the Stormlords. I'm super excited to see exactly how that combat goes. Here's a close-up of my Zenithal Titans who got scattered back a couple inches from their original landing point, almost landing directly into the river, so I got pretty close on that one. And here's a close-up of the Heralds of the Dawn. My Vanguard Paladors go directly into Skeksis of Dark Crystal. And I'm actually pretty excited to see that one because my opponent decided to put a Hortense build on Skeksis of Dark Crystal, so he does have the 1-up armor, 3 ward save that has a rerollable 1, so basically he only gets injured 1 out of 6 times according to math. But I'm really actually excited to see exactly how this stacks up because my Vanguard Paladors are armed with Storm Strike javelins, and those cause 2 wounds apiece every single time you get hit. So technically speaking, I only need to really wound him once and to have those wounds go through with his ward saves, and I'll be gravy if that ends up happening. So hopefully that's what ends up happening here in this portion. And here's a close of the Scions of Mercy as well as Lord Ios of Azure Earth getting ready to accept the charge from the Dunwich Horrors. And finally, here's a close-up of my Venerable Falcons moving into position to outmaneuver the Second Sons if it comes to that. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. Unfortunately, my magic phase was a wash, so not much really happened there. So we go directly to the shooting phase, and as you can see in this photo, my shooting phase is actually quite stupendous. I was able to kill 9 members of the Dunwich Horrors. I basically shot twice with my Adjudicators from the Scions of Mercy. They also fired twice with their Skybolt shock arrows as well. So I managed to kill 8 of them, which was absolutely awesome as well. So all things considered, I'm really happy with the shooting. Unfortunately, they are demons, so they don't have to worry about taking panic tests, so they kind of stand their ground. However, during the shooting phase, good gravy, the shooting phase here on the right-hand flank was absolutely awesome. In the end, I was able to kill 6 Chaos Knights when it was all said and done. That part was absolutely fantastic. Pretty much what ended up happening was a couple of factors. First of all, I rolled out of the box for my Skyforge Snipers. And the reason why that's the case is because for my Skyforge Snipers on their long strike crossbows, they have what's called a headshot special rule, which means that if I roll a natural 6, the shot actually causes 2 wounds and also ignores armor saves on those shots as well. I think I rolled 2 6s during my shooting, so because of that, I was able to get the armor of these Chaos Knights. They had to rely only on their ward save, so I was able to pop those guys off as well. At the same time, Orion the Sky Hunter also opened up with his Realm Hunter's bow, firing into them as well. Now his Realm Hunter's bow is actually quite impressive. It's actually got Strength 5, Armor Piercing, it's got 3 multiple shots, as well as the Sniper Special rule. So that part was absolutely fantastic. Same thing with the Star Eagle. The Star Eagle also causes 3 Strength 4-up hits on a 4-up, which also Strength 3 in combat as well on the attack. So I don't know if my Eagle did anything though, but the shooting combined though was absolutely fantastic. Now because that this unit has been brought down to only a quarter of its original size, it does have to take a panic test, and they turn around and they flee. I think they go back about 5 inches what they do when it's all said and done. So that part was absolutely fantastic. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And in the combat phase, oh, glorious combat. My Vanguard Paladors, the Heralds of Dawn, those guys were able to kill the unkillable Hortense Chaos Hero, Skeksis of Dark Crystals. It was absolutely fantastic. Pretty much I was able to cause, I think what ended up happening, it was my it was actually my Hounds that I was actually riding that were able to cause all the injuries. For the most part, when it came to my attacks from my Star Strike Javelins, I wasn't able to do anything. Unfortunately, I did manage to hit him a couple of times, but he was able to ward save those attacks, and so because of that, not much really happened from it. However, when it came to my Griff Chargers, though, those guys have 3 attacks apiece, and they also have armor-piercing attacks as well. I was able to finally slip in 2 wounds. They wasn't able to armor save or to ward save, so because of that, Skeksis of Dark Crystal got killed. And because he got killed on the charge, I decided to overrun, and since their next target right in front of them was the Second Sons were fleeing, I charged into those guys and managed to wipe those guys off the planet as well. So that part was excellent in the right-hand corner of the battlefield. And combat between my Seraphs of the Aether as well as Icarus the Lamplighter, they had no problem whatsoever just taking the hurt directly onto the Mutilith Vortex Beast. I was able to kill that character outright, which is absolutely fantastic. Meanwhile, close combat. Good lord. Close combat between Stormcast Eternals, Liberators versus Chaos Warriors. I wanted to know exactly what my guys were capable of, and I learned real quick what they're capable of, which is absolutely fantastic. First thing what ends up happening, though, is that my opponent's Battle Standard Bearer, Echoed Hellbrass, he declares a challenge because he has to with the Eye of the Gods table. So I decided to answer the call back. I decided to answer the call with Jericho the Doomcaller, just because he's kind of like a mid-tier hero. I mean, he's got decent weapon skill, decent toughness. He's also got that shooting ability. He is weapon skill 5, strength 4, toughness 4. He's got 3 wounds, 5 initiative, 3 attacks. So this guy's pretty good for a musician. He can actually fight pretty good as well. And at the same time, he also has his Sigmarite Broadsword, which is a magical weapon. Gives him 2 up strength. He can reroll 1s to wound, and 2 wounds of a 6 up. He actually causes 2 wounds. So this guy is not exactly no slouch in close combat. So I was excited to see exactly what ended up happening. So because of that, we actually go out and we actually fight against each other. Now, to give you guys an idea, Echoed Hellbrass, the champion, is Tzeentch. He's got a Marcus Tzeentch. He's got Chaos Armor as well as a shield. He's also packing the Ogre Blade, giving a 2-up strength as well. So it was a pretty good, fair match for the most part. I was really excited to see exactly what happens. Unfortunately, I was unable to cause any injuries, however, to Echoed Hellbrass. Echoed Hellbrass just finished off my Jericho the Doomcaller, without problem whatsoever. So I managed to kill him and also rolled up +1 toughness for his reward from the Eye of the Gods table. And then after that, of course, no more close combat occurred. He gets attacked first because all my Liberators are packing great weapons. He was able to kill 2 of my Liberators. So with all those attacks coming up forward, that's not bad. And the reason why I only killed 2 of my Liberators is because my Liberators have 2 wounds apiece for standard. So because of that, I had then a counterattack as well as my Liberators as well. Now, just to give you guys an idea about the stats on the Liberator, which is actually pretty good for my Sullen Martyrs, their weapon skill 5, strength 4, toughness 4. They have 2 wounds, 5 initiative, as well as 2 attacks. But they're all packing great weapons, so it kind of brings their strength to 6. So their initiative isn't really much of a factor. But I was able to put the hurt directly onto these guys, which is absolutely fantastic. Because they're packing strength 6 attacks against Chaos, what ends up happening is that they don't get armor saves. So the only thing they can actually rely upon is their ward saves, which is only 6 up. So because of that, these guys drop like flies. In the end, I was able to kill 9 of them. Now, this is where also the weakness of a Stormcast Eternal army comes into effect. My opponent actually beat me, I think by 2 is what he ended up doing when it was all said and done. And the reason why that was the case, ended up being a tie. I do apologize. He didn't beat me by 2. It was actually a tie. Now, the reason why it ended up being a tie is because he has a Battle Standard Bearer. I have one, so they cancel each other out. But he had a rank as well as a Standard Bearer, which gives him a 2-up on the combat res. Now, because my guys are skirmishers, I don't get rank bonuses for any of my units. So that's one of the problems I have to face. I also don't have a standard bearer for this unit. My battle standard bearer for my army is in this unit, but the unit itself doesn't have a standard bearer. So because of that, I don't get those rank bonuses or those standard bearer +1s from the unit standard. So that part was kind of rough. And like I said, it ended up being a tie for the most part, but I'm not upset about it. I wanted to see exactly what Liberators could do in close combat, and I'm more than happy with their performance. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Legion of Chaos on this one. And unfortunately for my opponent, he's actually losing his units pretty quickly. The only thing he pretty much has left now are his Demon Prince as well as his Chaos Warriors. And you gotta hand it up to my buddy O'Death. Most guys would quit at this point, but he decided he wanted to, bring the pain. As he said as we were playing, it's no longer about winning Commander Cheapskate. It's all about, just killing as many Stormcast Eternals as I can. So it was actually kind of funny when we actually did that. So in the move phase, the only thing he was able to do was actually charge forward with Lord Tremendous, his Demon Prince. He goes directly into the back of my Vanguard Paladors. And I'm also kind of interested to see exactly how they perform against a Demon Prince. That would be actually really kind of telling. So I'm looking forward to that. Meanwhile, his Stormlords are still in close combat with my Solemn Martyrs, and I'm really excited to see exactly how that combat goes. So here's a close-up of his Stormlords going up directly against my Solemn Martyrs in close combat, and I'm still pretty excited to see how this combat goes because so far my Liberators are proving quite impressive in close combat. And here's a close-up of this empty space in front of my Adjudicators, and that's because I forgot to talk about the Pink Horrors. The Dunwich Horrors, the reason why I forgot to mention them before is because I forgot. They actually got destroyed. The Dunwich Horrors actually declared a charge against my Scions of Mercy, my unit of Adjudicators. So they go charging forward, and I decided to hold my ground and to open fire as a response, and luckily for me I was able to finish off that unit just with shooting, so that part was really epic. And here's a close-up of Lord Tremendous charging directly into the back ranks of my Vanguard Paladors, and I'm actually kind of interested to see exactly how that combat goes as well. So with the movement phase over with, we skipped the magic phase, because unfortunately my friend O'Death just had a horrible magic phase, wasn't able to get any out of his spells, and since there is no shooting, that takes us directly to the combat phase. And the combat phase. Oh, the combat phase was actually quite painful. This is where I find out that my Hunter Paladors, Vanguard Paladors, aren't really good at taking damage all too well. In the end, Lord Tremendous was able to kill off one of my Vanguard Paladors. That guy already had 4 wounds on him, was able to finish him off pretty quickly. And at the same time, put 3 more floating wounds on another Vanguard Palador as well. So that part was really, really bad. Now, as for my attacks back, unfortunate for me, even though I do have multiple wound 2 on my Star Strike Javelins, I still have to wound him first in order to make that happen. So I did wound him a couple of times, which was kind of nice, but unfortunate for me, though, he was able to pass because of his armor save as well as his ward save, so I wasn't able to do anything back whatsoever. So that part was horrific. Needless to say, I had to roll, I think, a 3 in order to stand my ground, and needless to say, I did not roll that 3. I fled to the left-hand side. I think it was about 5 inches when it ended up rolling for that one, so they didn't get very far. However, Lord Tremendous, he actually ended up rolling at 12 on that one boxcar, so because of that, O'Death has Lord Tremendous sweep through my Vanguard Paladors, kills them all at the last man, and smashes directly into the back of the Zenithal Titans. And I'm also kind of curious to see exactly how that combat would go, because Paladin Retributor's are not weak in close combat. I would like to see exactly what they can do against a full-blown Demon Prince. So with that, go directly to the close combat phase, once again between the Stormlords as well as my Solemn Martyrs. Once again, my friend does have to declare a challenge with Ackled Hellbrass, and I decide to respond to the challenge with Horus the Stormbringer. He's my Knight Vexilor. He's also my Army Battle Standard Bearer. And the reason why this actually was a kind of a good match in my opinion, he's like Weapon Skill 7. He's got Strength 5, Toughness 4, 3 wounds, and 4 attacks with Initiative 6. He's also got Sigmund Armor, which gives him a 3-up armor save as well as a 5-up ward save as well. So I was actually kind of excited to see exactly how that could work out. And plus, he's also no slouch either. He also has a great weapon, which gives him Strength 7. So he's actually quite more on par with what an actual Exalted Hero can do. So the two of them fight it out. Luckily for me, I managed to survive. I only took 1 wound in that combat. Unfortunate for me as well, though, Horus the Stormbringer was only able to put 1 wound directly onto Ackled Hellbrass. So those guys will be continuing fighting another round of combat. So with that over with, we go back to fighting each other with our normal forces in close combat. When it was all said and done, I end up losing 1 of my Liberators. However, my Solemn Martyrs are able to kill 5 more of these guys, which is absolutely fantastic. So because of this, I won combat by 4. My opponent has to take a leadership test, and unfortunately, he fails his leadership test as well as a reroll. So because of that, the Stormlords are now fleeing off the battlefield. To make matters worse, he only escapes 4 inches away from my Solemn Martyrs. My Solemn Martyrs decide to pursue, and I actually rolled a 4 on that one as well, so that part was kind of crazy. So because of that, it is equal. My Solemn Martyrs go directly into the back of the Stormlords and chop down the rest of them and kill them one by one. At the same time, Ackled Hellbrass, because he's also the Army's Battle Standard Bearer, he automatically vaporizes because he broke in close combat. So that part was awesome. So as this is point that my buddy Odeth decides to call a game, the only thing he has left is his Demon Prince, while I relatively have the rest of my army. So he's there's no way he's going to be able to pull the victory out of this one. So he decides to concede the game at this point, and at the same time earning the very first victory for my Stormcast Eternal army in our studio. So that part was really epic. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after action report because this battle report is now over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 115, and this one ended up being a victory for yours truly. In the end, I was able to score 2,839 victory points, while Odeth was only able to score 375. For my losses, I lost Jericho the Dunecaller as well as the Heralds of Dawn. For Odeth, he lost Skeksis of Dark Crystals, Ackhold Hellbrass the Champion of Tzeentch, the Rune of Zarnath, the Quest of Iranon, the Dunwich Horrors, the Stormlords, the Second Sons, the Colors Out of Space, the Hunters of the Dark, as well as the Shadow over Innistrad. So the good thing about this battle is that this battle really taught me a lot about my Stormcast Eternal rules. So far, it's a very interesting army to play. The army is very polarized in some of the things that it can do, and then some of the things it can't do. It has some very significant strengths, but at the same time, some very significant weaknesses as well. So let's go and talk about the strengths real quick. The strengths of this army is that it has very high toughness, high strength, good armor saves, decent ward saves, as well as a high damage output for each of the units involved. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, the Stormcast Eternals have that down. However, like I said before, there are some very significant weaknesses with using Stormcast Eternals in games of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Now, for those weaknesses, they have very few miniatures due to a very high point value for each miniature. They don't receive rank bonuses in close combats, no war upgrades for musicians or standard bearers for any of the units as well. At the same time, they do not have access to magic, and they have no war machines. They're a very slow-moving army unless you use their Ride the Lightning game mechanic. And at the same time, they also have pretty weak magical defense. The units from the Warrior Chamber members, that parts of the army are amazing. These are like your first tier guys that were released with Warhammer Age of Sigmar Additional 1. So those guys are really good. They were really definitely the hammer of this army. They really put out a lot of damage output, especially against Chaos Warriors. So no complaints there. However, as for the Vanguard Chamber guys, though, they're pretty weak, all things considering. They're definitely a glass cannon portion of your army with pretty good offense, but when it comes to their defense, though, they have relatively weak toughness for what they can do. So that part is kind of an issue for the most part for those guys. But then again, it also kind of makes sense because they are kind of supposed to be like your scouting and reconnaissance elements, so narratively it does kind of work. I do feel pretty bad for my opponent on this one. Most of the fighting took place in the flanks, and I was pretty much slowly enveloping his entire army. I was attacking on 3 different fronts. He had a pretty rough time of it, really. When it came to close combat, my units were just really destroying his as well. Magic, however, which is something that was really important for his army, it didn't really play a major factor in this battle, and so I can see magic being a bigger problem for my Stormcast Eternal army if I face against higher magic wielding armies, but we'll have to see exactly how that ends up for those guys. So far, though, this army is currently sitting at 1 victory as well as 0 losses, so far so good. And even though my opponent lost this one, though, he was still an amazing opponent to fight against. I always love fighting against Odeth. It was an awesome game, and as always, I am looking forward to the rematch. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is always invaluable to us, as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blog.com. for all the latest greatest hobby news that's related to this channel. That's good for this one, you guys. We will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out and stay classy.